Drum roll, please. So that is awesome. Yay. When do you have like the actions of going in where you have a countdown and then you have drum roll? This is pretty awesome. So yeah, with that, welcome to this amazingly awesome panel where we are going to be talking about finding your spot in L&D and learning. We are so excited to have you here. I am Liz Lembke. I am the Chief Talent Navigator at Transforming Talent, and I also head up the path, the career growth stream for L&D Cares, and I am so ecstatic to be joined by these amazing people. So I'm going to start with my friend Vinnie. Vinnie, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and give a little insight into how do you see this finding a spot?
Absolutely. So let me start with how I feel about finding a spot. For me, everything has been very accidental so far, and it's just being at the right place at the right time. I think I just have been lucky enough, but it's not that hard. I think L&D community, maybe because I belong to that clan, I feel we are really warm people. We welcome people wholeheartedly. Now that L&D is finding its space, so it's not easy. You just have to watch out for all that opportunity that's right in front of you, and I think you will find your spot there.
I love it. So Vinnie, finding your spot. So can you perhaps introduce what is that spot you're in right now? What are you doing right now and where are you?
I'm in well, personally, I am at my home, warm, hot space here. It's like an oven right now. But I'm in Germany. I work for Thermo Fisher Scientific as a training development and LMS manager, and have been associated with L&D for quite some time now.
Yeah, I love it. Quite some time. At some point, that's basically the answers. Quite some time. We don't go into to minor details like that. I love it. Thank you, Vinnie. Awesome. All right, Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. So my name is Kim Crean, and I'm the Director of Learning and Development for a company called Science 37. They do decentralized clinical trials and provide the operating system for all clinical trials. And how I found my spot. So I've been doing this for a while, but I'll tell you, it's been 20 years. And I've been doing this at multiple different companies, anything from finance to event management, to manufacturing, just really across the board. And I have done everything from learning and development to instructional design to talent management. And how I found my spot is, well, I will say that I lucked into it. I wasn't afraid to take a challenge when it wasn't necessarily part of my the role that I was in was not a learning and development role. And I just was able to step up into a challenge and then went, that's my spot. I know I want to keep doing it. So I'm really glad to be here. Thanks everyone for being here.
This is awesome. Thank you, Kim. I love that. I love that. Not afraid to take a challenge. Yep. All right, Kyle.
Yep. My name's Kyle. I work for a company called Intercon Services. It's an international engineering firm, mainly in the nuclear industry. And I lead both the recruiting and the training sides of that company. And I guess, I've been around corporate training for about 20 years. I'm probably in that same zone as Kim. And came up through, I think like many people came up through kind of like the K-12 realm, and started teaching students that were emotionally handicapped and autistic, and it was very rewarding and extremely exhausting. And I found out that I just didn't have the stamina to be able to have a full career in that. Went into academic research a little bit, and then found myself going into corporate training afterwards when I got my master's. So it's kind of intentional on my side. I've kind of spread out throughout my career, into a little bit broader of a spectrum in HR, but, definitely L&D is my heart. So that's kind of my path.
I love it. I love it. My heart, my path. And it's interesting, out of your stories in terms of uncovering and taking those different stages. And we're definitely going to tie into what you just said about going from academia and teaching then into learning, because that's something particularly, we in L&D Cares, a large part of our work is coaching cohorts for people who are either looking to transition their role, or at the beginning of the pandemic, it was really about people who've lost their jobs. So really kind of uncovering, how do you settle and find yourself, and what are those things where you get jazzed and say, okay, that's where I belong. But having those experiences along the way really makes a difference. So awesome.
I was going to actually jump in, Liz.
Perfect.
Cohort graduate.
Really? Oh,
I am
Kim,
a cohort
awesome.
graduate, and I am a big believer that those cohorts really did make a difference to find your squad, your people. So one, thank you for that. But for those that are listening, also let's consider that for if you're in a place of transition, it really is worthwhile.
I couldn't agree more. And it's funny, like we, in particular corporate positions, like you get to a certain level, like maybe director or plant manager or whatever, and then you transition out and you're offered offboarding and also kind of how do you find a job, and you get that advice. But for the most of us, and for the majority of the population, there really isn't that support around how do you find your next gig in terms of something that you want to do. And when in L&D Cares, we really have this credo, choose love over fear, in terms of making that next step in your career, so that it's, what is that brave step that you took? And maybe we can go on with that a little bit off script to say, what was that brave step for you in your career where you really went into that unknown of that learning wobble? You had a choice of A or B. I'm
gonna jump in, guys, and just let you guys know. So I was at one point in the presentations department of a financial institution. I basically was in the typing pool, and I was, and we had a big like software rollout, and they were like, "Wow, Kim, you're not terrible in front of a group of people. Will you train this?" So my very first time that I had to train something, no script other than I knew the process pretty well, I delivered to 400 people in an auditorium. I had no fear because, one, I shouldn't have any fear because I didn't know what I was getting into. I actually lost that position. I was offered no onboarding, and I had a choice between go back into presentations, right, and go back into that kind of like typing pool, or go into learning and development. And so I chose the path of go into learning and development, even though I was starting kind of the next level down. I was a coordinator position. I didn't care. And what it did is brought me so much joy because I found my groove. And it was don't be afraid. That was the key that, because I could always go back to presentation, right? You can always go back. Years later if you find it's not your thing, but why not try? Now, I was also at a point in my career where, there weren't a lot of other responsibilities. So I understand, it's a challenge for those that say have been in academia for a long time, and now they're making the choice to come out of it. But I would say that you have measurable and useful skills that you don't even know that you have, because you're so used to like, well, that's just what I do every day. Right. But other people don't do that every day, So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to you, Liz, but I definitely did that.
I love it. Vinnie.
Yeah, I mean, I completely relate to what Kim just said. Pretty parallel journey. I was into database development. And one fine day I realized I was done with select star from and running tables. I just walked up to my manager and I told him, this is not working. It's not going to go well for you if I continue here, because I'll be least interested in doing the same thing. And then he's like, okay, you have 5 minutes, decide. We have a vacancy on our ID team. And I didn't know what ID was back then. And in 2 minutes, I was like, yeah, let's get done with this. I don't want to be in this team anymore. I want to move. I think that was the best 5-minute decision I've ever taken. Usually I take 10 minutes to even choose my groceries or stuff, anything. It takes me more than 10 minutes to decide, come to a particular decision. But that was a big switch. But then that was not it, because I was new to this. I didn't know how to go. I did not have a proper navigation. But I must tell you, the team that I jumped into had really cool seniors. Really cool seniors. I had them, not exactly L&D, but they actually, not exactly instructional designing, but they actually told me a lot about L&D, how things work, how there's instructor led, the clear bifurcation. I think you need a mentor to be very clear. You need a mentor, you need a direction. You just can't say, I'll figure it out. No, never can there be a situation in any path of your life that you say, I'll figure it out on my own. No, there is one help that you need. And I feel these three seniors of mine, they came to my rescue. The first time I was delivering my classroom session, I was hell nervous. And I had this one senior sitting at the back of the classroom, and she's like, you just go, Vinnie, just go. Don't worry about it. Just look at me. Just look at me. Look at my face when you're training. And I'm like, I just went like that. And then she's like, you're doing good. You're doing good. And after every break, she was like, you're doing great. I think all these things made me, it intrigued me a little more that this is not it. L&D must have more to it. It's not just instructor-led session or virtual webinars or whatever. There's more to it. And that's when I switched gears and started getting into cohorts. I think cohorts are the most interesting thing. Right now, I am into this X API cohorts as well, where I keep watching what different cohorts do just to see where I fit into. That's what you need to do. When I say keep watching, that's what I meant. You need to keep your eyes and ears open, because around you there are a lot of things happening with L&D, and that's where you feel like you will realize, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. Unless you get that experience, you will not really know what exactly you need. And that's where you pick up your passion. And for me, I feel to be in L&D, you need to be really passionate. You can't do it just for the heck of it. You want to do it, that's when you will do it.
Yep.
There has to be a verb for learning, is what you're saying, Vinnie?
Yes. You should be a lifelong learner. You should be a lifelong learner for that.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, Kyle, what was that piece of going into that brave space for you?
Yeah, I'll say I was much more in Vinnie's court than Kim's in terms of fear factor. I was terrified, first chance I got to kind of step up in front of a crew, but same kind of thing that both of them described. I got opportunities, as I was working with various companies that kind of volunteered for anything and everything. That was great. And even if those things kind of pushed me into a space that I was uncomfortable with, I'm very introverted by nature, but I kind of push myself and say, hey, I'm going to do something that's kind of push my limits a little bit more and help me grow. And every time I did it, I found some joy by being able to say I did that. And it's taken me into worlds that I've never dreamed of being into, in terms of opportunities to work internationally, in terms of opportunities to be more into the HR space, and lead performance management, succession planning, and all these other various aspects of my role. And it's fun, but the best thing that I would say is just if you see an opportunity out there, don't be scared. Just take it, as Kim, as Vinnie said. You'll reap the benefit coming from it. That opportunity is being posed to you for a reason. So if you let that thing pass by, somebody else is going to take it.
That is so funny. So one of my favorite hashtags is, when opportunity knocks, swing that door wide open and let it in, because you never know what it's good for. I like to say, life is a series of maximum 3-year experiments of, it's, you don't have to commit the rest of your life to something. It's that aspect of what can you learn, and then make those decisions and say, okay, getting that onboarding, getting your feet wet, and then at the end to say, okay, hey, I know this, I got this. You have those networks. And when you have, what Vinnie was talking about, if I have to do this one more time, I'm going to go crazy. And you're going to have a really disengaged employee. That's you sending yourself a sign saying, okay, you need to get out of that comfort zone, because it's becoming a boredom zone. And then saying, okay, how do you push up against it and go into that brave zone of learning, where there's going to be some wobbles. And like you said, how do you get that support around you? But getting that gumption up of, it goes back to the do it to learn it. So that's awesome. Yeah, please.
Yeah, you know what? I want to add on to something that Kim just said in her, in her answer or in her response. she mentioned that, you know, she was okay when she knew that she has to take 2 steps back in order to get something,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
That's the most important attitude you need to carry, because it's okay to take 2 steps back, because that's when you can actually run faster. You need to come back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And actually, as kind of an addendum to that, you know, when you go from role to role, so say you're at a certain level in academia and you've got, you know, and I'm not necessarily talking about money, but I may be talking about title, right?
Yeah.
Because you know
Mhm.
what you bring and you know your value. So I have had titles that go from VP of Compliance, Training, Design, and Communication at a bank to, you know, Associate Director in Training to a Senior Instructional ID. So the titles in learning, I have found, unless it's a specific learning organization,
Mhm.
don't know what to title us. They're like, we really need someone who can do everything.
Yeah.
Unless they're very stratified or structured. And so don't be afraid of that kind of title release. Just make sure that you're on the track for actually getting the financial commitment that you know that you have a value to. So
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, and I think, you know, that's a really good point. And Kyle, you're coming in from talent acquisition. And, you know, I know that's what we also have in L&D Cares, and our recruiting friends are like, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's from an acquisition standpoint. I came in, you know, through training, kind of grew into acquisition, and you know, it's one of those things that, to Kim's point there, you know, when I look at, you know, resumes, or I look at applicants kind of coming through, regardless of the position, I try to see exactly where their skills are and exactly where their, you know, I'm a big attitude person, so exactly where their attitude and their passions lie as well. So, you know, I don't want to say that titles never matter. I'm sure there's a you know, that I think that's too bold of a statement, but you know, to me, it will always trump, you know, experiences and being able to look at, you know, exactly where that person's, you know, passions and interests lie versus just looking purely at titles.
Yeah, well, very well said. So we have 2 questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to go with the first one. Hi from Tacoma, Washington. So here, Vinnie, can you please share what it's like to work as an instructional design as a polyglot? So having multi-skills in many areas.
Oh, I think it's a bliss. It's been a bliss for me, because coming from technical background, I can pretty much crack or learn any applications faster, because you just need to have that technical skill set. And it actually came in handy for me when I started doing LMS, while I started handling LMS. Now that I am primarily involved with LMS management, I pretty much use my technical skills. And but I really like to bring this up, that initially it was really tough job, and this person who's asking this question is one of my senior. He actually helped me transition from a technical robot to an instructional designer.
I love it. I
He was
love
like
it.
my teacher, so he would just be like, Vinnie, Vinnie, he would just go like that every time I had my issues with my especially with the way I convey things is not technical, too direct, and it has to be simpler with words, easy to understand, all these aspects. He's one of the person who got that into me. I'm really thankful for him.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Vinnie. I love it. Okay. All right. Next question is for Kyle. So Kyle, what is the one thing you did in your transition from education to corporate that you think helped land your first position outside of education?
So to be quite honest, what I did was I walked in with a portfolio, and you know, some of that portfolio was very much crafted very intentionally. So, you know, things that I had worked in kind of like a professional development space, you know, working with other teachers, you know, I kind of brought that with me, did some stuff at home, you know, learned some software, you know, because I was trying to initially get into just any area of instructional design. That's what I have my master's in. So, you know, I walked in there with, you know, basically trial versions of at that point Adobe Captivate, and you know, a course that I built on. I walked in, you know, old school with a CD that I burned and said, here's my course, going through it. And you know, it was very much hodgepodge, but you know, I also walked in there with a I'll say confidence. I won't say cockiness. I'll say confidence in saying that, a student's a student's a student. I've always said that, the third grader that's in the back of the classroom being a pain in the neck and talking to everybody is still that person that's 55 years old in a conference room doing the exact same thing. We grow older and, sometimes, a little bit thicker at times, like myself, but, it's one of those things that we just don't change, we're kind of the same personality. So if you have that confidence, just knowing that it's pretty much the same. You got students, you got to engage them. Learners always, they differ in their styles, and you've got to be able to assess where they're at and be able to grow them to where you want them to be at. You take that same mentality, it's going to be fine. But you've got to have that confidence. Otherwise, you're not going to exude it to anybody else.
I agree. Very well said. Very well said, Kyle. So it's that aspect of knowing what you can, but at the same time, also having that humbleness and that ability to say, okay, where are my learning spaces and how am I going to go after them and take the accountability? I love it. One question that we also were discussing before I go over to the next ones in the Q&A was, how do you deal with a gap in your resume? So Vinnie posed this question, and I thought it was a really great one. So Kim, do you want to tackle that first?
Sure. So, and I just got some feedback that my mic isn't so loud, so I am going to talk really loud. How, one, you have to have a narrative about why either you left your last position or you were asked to leave that last position, right? Yeah. And so for some of us, that might be that, we had family members to take care of, and in my case, I've either had my job has been absorbed, right? So, my job, I was part of a transition and my job got absorbed, or I was part of a reduction in force. And what I really had to be able to communicate to those I was working with is what I did in the meantime. Kyle actually brought that up, a really important point. What I did in the meantime, and then also understand there is a multi-step process when you're at my level, right? So when you're at the director level, you're not going to be able to apply to something and get a job within a day. It's something that takes time. And so how I usually communicate and address that is, I usually have a consulting process in the background where I'm working with other people on either networking or whatever skills are. And to be quite honest, I do a lot of offboarding for those that don't have the opportunity to actually get that offboarding. So I just do that as my volunteer time. That's how I manage it. And then the next steps is I work on all the different extra pieces that I need to address. Like, I have a marketing plan, I have a brand plan for me and how to get that next position. But when you're communicating with talent acquisition specialists, it's a challenge because they're looking like, from this date to this date, what were you doing? And and you might have had some days where you might have been eating Cheetos on the couch. Like, we get it.
Absolutely. Card carrying Cheetos member.
Most of the time you were in job search, network, writing articles, you were working on other things. And to be honest, develop the narrative that it makes sense for you and what you want to communicate out to others. Does that make sense, everyone?
Absolutely. Spot on.
Yeah. Love it.
All right, good.
And so, I completely, perfect. So another question that we had was learning experiences, and also how important is a graduate degree in your opinion?
Frankly, for me, I'll just jump in here. I feel graduate degree, this is strictly from my opinion and experience that I've seen, that it's not that important. Instructional graduate degree in L&D is not very important. If I am looking at someone, I wouldn't look at their degree. I would look at the experience that they bring in, the knowledge that they bring in, and the skills that they bring in. Right? For me, that's what speaks, and that's how it's been. Like, I am not a graduate. in L&D or instructional design. It's just that now we are seeing these things. It's as good as even if you have a certificate from a Udemy or from all these online portals, that would also serve the purpose. At the end of the day, all I think most of us gauge is how is your understanding about what you're getting into. Do you know what you're getting into? Do you understand the concepts? Do you understand the theories? Do you understand the pedagogy, the learning principles, all the other things that's associated with L&D? Do you understand this field properly? Is what I look at. But yeah, that's what I look at.
Vinnie, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, my degree is in theater, right? So here's how, and again, I mean, one, it gives to the I can speak loudly, but two, it goes to the how, what's my narrative, right? So I know how to write and produce things quickly that have deadlines, right? Because that's what I did when I was in theater. I know how to get up in front of a group of people. So when I'm looking at if I'm looking for someone who has a graduate degree, it's because I need something very specific that I may not have a handle on. So I may be looking for someone who has organizational design experience or instructional organizational psychology, where we're talking about kind of an overarching. I would be looking for someone who would have a master's in human resources, unless that's what they felt they needed to feel like they need to transition. But I do know, and Kyle probably can talk about this, being in the nuclear industry, degrees are important depending on the company that you're going to. So Kyle, what do you think about that?
No, you're very right on that, and I'm slightly biased because I have my master's in instructional design, and although I had a psychology undergrad, so it was, a tongue in cheek, I always say, what the heck are you going to do with that? So it really depends on A, what your undergrad is kind of sitting in, and B, to Kim's point, 100%. What industry you're going into. The credibility factor is important. I worked at a company that was nonprofit, but very much in the medical side of things, and you got all these people with dual MD, PhDs. Credentials do matter, and definitely gets your leg in the door. Now, to Vinnie's point, and to Kim's point, how often do I use I guess I could say I use the ADDIE process just as a mental background, but the 9,000 other things that I learned through my master's degree, probably not very often, but it did give me at least a step into it. So the world, but that's also 20 years dated. So the world has changed so much. Now what you get in a master's program 20 years ago can now be found on YouTube. Yeah. So it's a different environment. So as long as you're gaining that knowledge, and as long as you have a good story to share about how that knowledge gets you into the door of that next role and how it can make you successful, and I would agree. I think that's more important than just a pure degree.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to, I was just going to go back to it for a second. It depends on the industry that you're in, but it also depends on the company. Right. Yeah. And if the company doesn't know what they need, sometimes they're looking for a degree. Right. So just know that there may be, if they don't know what they want, they sometimes look for that certification or degree.
I'm going to have a little bit of a different opinion because I am one of those so I am a pedagogical and organizational industrial psychologist, and I specialized in intercultural work teams. And one of my biggest challenges has been there's a little bit of an aversion to evidence-based approaches. And so that's been something that I have been really challenged with. A lot of people will do it to learn it. I say, absolutely, there is that. But then understanding kind of what Vinnie was talking about is understanding, do you understand the theories? Are you willing to dig in? It's not necessarily the degree. It's a curiosity for an evidence-based approach that you use, rather than saying, okay, this looks good, or we'll just make up a survey that seems like something I can do. And so this is where I think also, and this is I always get on that soapbox as psychologists, I'm like, we have to be stronger and help. We need to forget, we're never going to solve the MBTI issue. MBTI is crap. Don't use it for hiring. If it helps you with team development, power to you. But there's a lot of other things that we need to be helping with in terms of interviewing, et cetera. So this is where I also see, if you have a degree in something and you have some evidence-based approaches, awesome, bring it in. That's going to be helpful for the team where there is a mix of these different experiences, backgrounds, competencies, et cetera. And that is the mix that is beautiful, is to say, hey, how can I build upon my theater background? With every experience that we take, be it working at McDonald's or wherever, bringing that in is part of that beauty. But don't be afraid to say that you have a degree or where you have your knowledge. And don't be afraid to say, okay, I really don't know anything about this. Can y'all help me?
I mean, let's be fair, right?
Yeah.
Most of us who get hired in learning and development, we're getting hired from either an operational side or an organization or a side. And they're not experts in what we do. We're experts in what we do. So we just have to be able to have the narrative and the confidence to be able to say, this is what I can do, and this is the way in which I'm going to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
I certainly agree. And I think some of that aversion is just the fact that sometimes when you get too textbooky, all of a sudden not flexible enough, not flexible enough. So you can spend, if you want to go textbook, with whatever side of L&D you want to look at, instructional design, let's just pick on for with happenstance. If you look at that and you say, I'm going to go through the full, model, Dick and Carey model, whatever you want to pick, it could take you 6 months to be able to go through a design process, and you're like, you're going to get crucified.
Yes, that's true.
I've got 6,000 other courses I need you to go through. So as long as you're flexible, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah. I've even had some companies when I attended interviews like, will you be able to work without all these XYZ model? I'm like, sure. I mean, this is a dream job. Give me the job.
I love it.
Hey, you're telling me what I was dreaming about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I forgot. That's it. I've erased it out of my memory.
I love it. That is too hilarious. Oh my goodness. Okay. So our final question, final round. What is the one piece of advice that you would give a learning and development professional to find their spot? Kyle, shall we start with you?
Sure. I would just say, L&D is so broad. I mean, there's a million different places that you can go within it. And, it's one of those things, and it's cliche, but, find something that you're passionate with, be open to exploring and seeing where your passions do lie, because it's hard to be able to pinpoint your career until you had a chance to be able to explore it. But, seek that passion, and, don't get so stuck into a side of, well, I need to be a generalist towards everything. Some people be great at that. Some people will say, you know what, I love sitting behind a computer designing e-learnings, and that is my passion. Or some people say, love getting in front of a group and seeing, that light bulb moment, whatever it may be. Just find that passion, go with your full heart and have that confidence behind it to know that, if it's meant to be, it's gonna happen. And, certainly we're in a family environment in the L&D world. So you got a bunch of people that can advocate on your behalf. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Vinnie?
Yeah, I would go with the fact that be open to any opportunity that you get, which means you need to compromise a little at your end on what you're getting. But eventually you get your feet wet, how you will have to navigate through the system. Once you get through L&D, you will start exploring things. Something like Kyle said, just keep yourself open to all the opportunities. It's easy to transition when you are inside a system. You start learning new things about a lot of things. It's not like all of us already knew what L&D had. Like he said, it's broader umbrella. Now I've started learning that there's leadership training, there's onboarding, there's offboarding. L&D is everywhere. You will never be out of job. You are never out of job. Trust me, it's like the best job security field that we have. So just be open and don't just keep looking at these opportunities. Start somewhere. Don't wait for long enough that you've just left all these golden opportunities and now you're like, okay, I'm out of opportunities. Start somewhere. I would say start somewhere.
Awesome. Kim?
I will say So here's what I tell anyone who wants to transition into learning and development, or really any job. I say, write out 3 years from now what you want your ideal day to look like.
Nice.
Right? What are the activities? What does it feel like? What are you doing? And then you can start lining up those pieces against what kind of job you want to do. Does it mean that you're writing? Does it mean that you're interfacing? And then also know thyself.
Yes.
Right? So let's be clear, right? I'm someone that if I am sitting behind a computer for 24/7, it's probably not going to work out so well. Okay?
Yeah.
If I'm up in front of a room, or if I'm up in front of a virtual room, I get energy from that. I would not necessarily have this. Kyle may not have the same experience, and he's like, peace out. Like, I don't need to train in front of a bunch of people. But so know thyself, know where your strengths and your passions are, but really understand. And then also start talking to other people about what they do in learning. Especially in L&D Cares and any of these organizations, we're willing to step in and help you. So
I love it. Oh man, we could go on all day. There's some great questions also here in the chat, and we will follow up on those so folks can go into the lounge and continue this discussion. For example, a question came in for the panelists: how many of you found your roles by applying to a job online or through a recruiter versus an internal transfer or someone who you hired you?
Oh, mine has been almost all entirely on LinkedIn or through Indeed, and networked into the positions.
Yep.
So mine have that's primarily how I've done it.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, I have a mix. I've applied and had some networking opportunities too.
Yeah, very good. Vinnie?
I would say I've been through LinkedIn majorly, but just give a twist to networking and connect.
Yeah.
Just don't send your LinkedIn requests straight out. Yeah. So I would say both of these would work.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, the transactional of like, here, I'm looking for a job. Do you have one for me? That doesn't work. But establishing a relationship and rapport, and what Kim was saying about, your credibility and what you bring to the table, those are those aspects where your network also feeds your opportunity, where people also say, hey, I heard about this, or I've seen this, or this is going on with my company. Would you be willing to apply? And so, yeah.
I mean, even like there's something that's happening right now. I say, look at business journals, right? The Charlotte Business Journal, it tells you all of the opportunities that are coming into your area. So right now, I have a list of 15 companies that are going to be coming in the next 3 to 5 years. And I can start targeting who I want to talk to, because I'm at a certain level, who I want to talk to, so that I can potentially go into another company that's in my local area.
I love it. Oh man, so much richness in this panel. I cannot thank you all enough. I cannot thank enough our wonderful attendees with the great questions and the great comments. Man, we are an awesome community. Woohoo!
I will go ahead and go in the lounge, and I'll be in the lounge for the next 40 minutes or so if anyone wants to talk to me, okay?
Same here.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.